And then I want you to turn the napkin over, and I want you to print the word of, O-F. And do it on both napkins. So what I'm about to share with you will probably get your head turning, much like the movie The Exorcist, because it will be contrary to much of what we have been taught since 1976. That means pretty much anybody under the age of 64 has an incomplete and inaccurate comprehension of this gin joint called America. In 1976, President Jimmy Carter removed American history from the school system, and they only left U.S. history in place for people to get the false sense that was American history. And this removal was done on purpose. And why? A 166-year-old fraud has been discovered, and the perpetrators tried to sidestep their contracts and then make void the Declaration of Independence. Now pause on that for a second. They tried to make the Declaration of Independence null and void. Okay, so why would they do that? Because if you didn't know who you were, how you got here, you could not express your rights. And if you're unable to express your rights in the world today, you do not have them. The second fraud that we discovered is in the early 1900s, the teaching institutions were infiltrated. So the teaching institutions that taught the teachers, who became the professors, who taught the teachers, who became the teachers of today, have all been compromised. Many of our social institutions have been infiltrated and compromised all around us. So if you want to know why the world looks and feels so convoluted that you know something inherently is wrong but can't quite place your finger on it, it's because of deception. Now, who am I? I am a documented, internationally recognized American who lives under the Declaration of Independence in one of the states of the Union, as they were pre-Civil War. Now, the Civil War actually wasn't a war, and that's one of the things I'll cover here shortly. We actually have 3 constitutional contracts. And if you didn't know that, you do now. So why do we have 3? Well, our founding fathers, after winning the colonial war, recognized that the King of England and the Vatican were about to come after them. So they threw their 13 colony states authorities together in international jurisdiction, creating a body called the Confederation of States. And then the Confederation of States created something called the Federal Republic. And all of this is on the American side of the equation. Now, the American Federal Republic held the contract to operate our mints, to stamp coin and mint our money. Well, this quaint idea of the land of the free and the home of the brave flew in direct contradiction of monarchy rule. Monarchy rule by kings, queens, earls, potentates of any sort was an anathema to the American experiment. We end up with this treaty of peace, and the treaty of peace has two parts to it: land as well as sea. And the word law means land, air, and water, and these are three jurisdictions of law. So the King of England in the land jurisdiction negotiated a land-based treaty with us on the open sea. Our founding fathers, having just signed the Treaty of Peace, officially ending the colonial war, then pitched a business proposition to the King of England. And out of that business proposition, 19 stipulated services were asked for. And the very first one is they need help from the pirates that were raiding the merchant ships up and down the eastern seaboard and in the Caribbean. And that's where the U.S. Navy came into existence. The U.S. Navy has always been managed by the Crown under contract. Let that digest for a second. Managed, paid for by the Crown for our countrywide defense. Now, after signing the Treaty of Peace of 1783 and the Treaty of Versailles, which is the land-based treaty, the list of delegated services included things like representing us in international trade. So mentally think of us as a brand new country. We're primarily farmers. Bob over here grows cotton. Tom, tobacco. Harry over here grows peanuts. And as a farmer, they have to send someone around to go sell the crop. And sometimes that crop doesn't get completely sold, and some of it sits in the barn and doesn't do us a lick of good. So, dear Kingy, how about if we tell you what we have in the barn and you take it into the international community, and do you think you can sell it for a couple of shillings? And the king's people said, surely we can do this. So that was one of the other contracts. And these 19 contracts of delegated service have not been properly taught to the American people in oh so long. We don't know who, what, where, how, why things are supposed to properly function. We go through a period of time when the European royals were hot under the collar because people were leaving Europe and coming to the New World. And they had to stop the brain drain. They did everything they could by not allowing certain trades out of their grasp to deprive us of the ability to grow and to thrive. Many of our ancestors had to hide under the cloak of just being a plain farmer, an everyday, podunk, common occupation of right, just to be able to get on the boat and get out of Dodge of Europe. Come to the New World, shed their anonymity, and pick up their true trade, whether it be butcher, baker, cooper, blacksmith, whatever the trade was. If it hadn't been this way, our long ago growth would have been much accelerated. So the royals of Europe wanted to subjugate America again because of the land of the free, the home of the brave. It just wasn't working for them. It was getting hot under the collar in their neighborhood with the uprisings of give us what the American people have. And the King of England's people went back to the Vatican because of the Treaty of Peace and told the Pope that they were going to come back into America, guns a-blazing, and put us under boot. And the Pope held up this treaty and said, nope, not allowed. If you do that, these things called treaties don't mean a thing to anybody. Well, we would like to have a different conversation with you then, they said. We found the scroll, and on it there are certain maxims of law written in Latin. And one of them is, he who can be deceived, let him be deceived. And the Pope of the time said, yes, okay, we know about that. It's part of our Roman tradition. Well, since you won't let us go back in America, guns a-blazing, we want to talk to you about a different plan. And this plan was constructed to be over about 2 centuries of time, dealing with fraudulently substituting many things out of our awareness and mislabeling them. So to get this thing up and rolling, a few things happened. Our founding fathers passed what's known as the Tona Act. The Tona Act is the Title of Nobility Act, such that no English officer, like an attorney, could hold even the office of dog catcher in the American government. We didn't want undue foreign influence anywhere. Well, in 1830s time frame, Abraham Lincoln, whose family was a British loyalist family, during the colonial war period, stood before 3 British Admiralty judges and gave a fealty oath and became an attorney. If you look up the Edwardian title of nobility and you get down to Royal Knight, the next office is called Esquire. And esquires that were here in America were paid a 20-shilling stipend every so often by the king to maintain their presence to conduct their business here on his behalf. When we passed the Tona, many of them left the country. Some got on the boat, went back to England, and a good many of them went back to Canada in order to maintain their stipend. Well, Abraham Lincoln, in getting his fealty in place, was one of those characters who was not allowed to hold an office in our American government. What's been discovered is that a corporation was fired up in Edinburgh, Scotland, and smuggled into America. And it landed in Delaware. And they filed its corporate paperwork, looked around, said, okay, no one noticed, and then smuggled it into D.C. And then they put Lincoln on a train and ran him around the country. Well, he could be the president of any corporation. McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Bed Bath & Beyond, Macy's. Well, this particular company that they brought in was called the United States of America, Inc. And it was a British Commonwealth corporation. And it was incorporated. And when they ran Lincoln around, and our ancestors voted for themselves a new president, thinking, yay-o, honest Abe, they inadvertently made themselves British subjects by way of semantic deceit and fraud. This is how the democracy was populated. Our real America is actually a constitutional Republican form of government. And a Republican form of government has not been properly taught to the American people in ever so long. And the so-called Civil War is actually an internationally recognized commercial mercenary action between 2 business entities known as our contractors. There hasn't been an actually American declared war since 1814. America has been at peace since 1814. Think of all the things. The Civil War, French and Indian, World War I, Spanish American, World War II, the Korean conflict, and every other little action that we've been drug into as commercial mercenary actions. And if our grandparents right now knew that they were being used as cheap commercial mercenaries and banker cannon fodder, they'd be rolling over in their graves. So this entity that Abraham Lincoln brought over required the rewrite of all state constitutions. Now I'm going to pick on Virginia because it's an extreme. The greatest prison conceived by the mind of man is the mind of man, because if one cannot see the bars of their imprisonment, they can't see the chains of their enslavement. So you have Virginia, which is the land and soil jurisdiction. You walk out your front door, you step on Virginia, and voila, you're there. Then you have the state of Virginia. You have the American state of Virginia, and you have the British territorial state of Virginia, as created by the United States of America, Inc., under Lincoln. Then you have the Virginia State Trust, which is known as Virginia State. And then you have the Commonwealth of Virginia. All these are separate jurisdictional bodies. And if you don't know what they are, how can you object knowingly? And because our American history has been so convoluted and deprived, an institution created back in 1776 that ran America from 1776 to 1789 is called the Federation of States. It still exists today. And it was called out of the shadows of history to do its job. The members of the Confederation, as it existed in 1760 time range, were hunted down, beaten, slandered, and in some cases murdered. And they ended up having to do a cross-country run for their lives. Well, one of the members of the Federation of States learned his historic role at the age of 60 from his mother on her deathbed. So about 20 plus years ago, there was an attempt to call the Federation of States back into session. And one state answered the call successfully, and it was the building block. And I have good news for you. All 50 states of the Union are back in session, folks. You almost lost this gin joint called America. And in time, the story behind this rebuilding structure and this effort will be made very well known to everybody. So, you as an American have been lied to in your face and behind your back. You have been denied your American birthright, and by means of which you've been withheld. Your birth certificate is actually the instrument that does this. The birth certificate is actually evidence of a crime and multiple crimes that were committed against you while you were barely in your cradle. And unbeknownst to you, the name on that instrument is actually not you. The name on that document is given to your presumed dead twin. Yes, folks, all of you are presumed to be twins. The afterbirth, when it came into this world, had a pulse. Albeit it was rather deformed and the poor character didn't survive. So they created this document for an infant decedent estate. And the name on that document is given to the afterbirth. Have you heard of this straw man? The movie The Wizard of Oz talked about it. The Tin Man, the Straw Man, the Lion-Hearted. Folks, that movie was a disclosure project. The Yellow Brick Road was the gold going back to the city of Oz, which was D.C. And the wizard behind the curtain was called the alien property custodian. So your American birthright was rolled up in a trust in a relationship called a usufruct. And it's been managed behind your back all of your life. And your relationship to it has been concealed from you by the edumacation system. And I don't use the ed word very lightly anymore. I make a mockery of it. I was sitting in a law archive one day doing some research when the light bulb went off. And I realized half of everything I knew was wrong and the other half of my life was built on a lie. It was a gut-wrenching moment for me. So let's explain this thing called the birth certificate. It's actually a bond. It's printed on bond paper. The name on it is created under British rule and is actually held under royal trademark in London. You have spent your life using someone else's property. Building your life. So when you examine your birth instrument, there will be a baby's birthday. And 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks later, there's a registration date. When you incorporate the word Regis, it's a royal act. As in registration, registry, it's handing over to the crown. Now, your American heritage is now treated like a coat, and your birth certificate is a coat check. And it's held at the DTCC Corporation in New York. So William Shakespeare said all the world is a stage. So who's on stage but actors? And yes, you're an actor in this play called life. But what role are you playing right now? Butcher, baker, candlestick maker, chief cook, bottle washer, husband, wife, bailor, bailee, usufruct, donor, donee, trustor, trustee, How about private banker? And you're wearing all these hats simultaneously, and you're doing these jobs for free, folks. You've been doing all this for free. Now, how did they get away with this? Let's go back to the teaching institutions that were infiltrated in the early 1900s. Each generation of teacher and learning material was simultaneously dumbed down. And you have been put through a cattle chute of language control to put you in the cattle chute of a slave. The greatest prison conceived by the mind of man is the mind of man, because if one cannot see the bars of their imprisonment, they cannot see the chains of their enslavement. So your language, which was spoon-fed to you, does this to you. And the entire construct of the system works by admissions and confessions. And the very nature of the words that come out of your mouth puts you in this captivity. There's lawful and there's legalese. Legalese uses Black's dictionary. The last American congressionally approved American dictionary is Bouvier's 1856. And you'll find definitions are different, vastly different in some cases. Such as a name. For those of you that read your Bible, Adam was given a job. Go forth and name all the creatures of the world. Name everything. So if you're on the Adamic side of the equation, you're one of the namers, not the named. Now, a nom de guerre is a name at war. And yes, you've been involved in a war that you neither see, hear about, or recognize, but nonetheless, you've been participating in this war. The war of your mind, the war of your soul. A nom de guerre is a name at war, and that is what is on that birth certificate. You've been left with the presumption that that name is you. When in reality, your mom, your mother, being in the throes of giving you into this world, was in great pain, probably medicated, was thrust a great pile of paperwork, and here, sign this. And your mother, through lack of disclosure, waived your American birthright to the crown, making you a British subject living on American soil. There is an old piece of legislation currently being examined by the American States of the Union called the Residence Act of 1790. It's the legislation that allowed the British to stay here to provide those services. And I'm here to tell you tonight, we're looking to revoke it. Some of our supposed friends and allies have proven their worth of being the absolute opposite. The institutions of our America have been converted into a corporation with without our mutual consent and knowingness, so that the United States of America Incorporated, imported by Abe Lincoln, having rewritten the state constitutions, also rewrote your county business entity. So every county entity around you, the treasurer, the assessor, the county itself, has a UBI business number. The state has a UBI business number. And so did the entity known as United States. Well, the last sitting president and CEO of this business known as United States took this corporation into bankruptcy court in Tallahassee District Bankruptcy Court and filed a Chapter 11 on it. And before he did this, he signed various executive orders, put into motion something called devolution for the unwinding of all this corporate structure. This is why the last 8 years felt like a nightmare. So I have posted up in the Constitution Room a PACER court case number for the United States Corporation. You'll need a PACER account to go track back through it. And the last president and CEO of this corporation was one Donald J. Trump. So if you go back to video footage of his 2016 inauguration, the military came out of the bandstand, and then Donald came in behind them, and he stated this was unlike any other election. We, indicating the military, are handing back the power to you, we the people. So who is we the people? It may not be the common everyday referenced meaning that most folks have. Because when you go back in time and look at the entity that issued forth the Declaration of Independence, they were the American people who had stepped into certain roles in their state and became American state citizens. And they did such with a singular fealty to the benefit and business of their respective state, whether it's Maine, Virginia, Maryland, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. So we the people were being handed back the American government. And that's the devolution program. In order to overcome some of this corporate chicanery that's been done to you, you actually have to raise your hand and object. So it's like, no, hell no, oh bloody hell no. You have to be adamant about this. So who are you? Where were you born? Here in America, you get your inherent God-given American birthright from the state upon which you were born. I happen to have been born on California, so I'm a Californian. And California was one of the original states of the Union before the Civil War broke out. My family lineage goes back to North Carolina, 1775, and Maryland in 1760, and I have it all documented. So I am a part of a body called the American Assemblies, and I happen to be on Washington, so I'm part of the Washington Assembly. Every state of the Union has a state-level assembly. You've heard of the government of the people, for the people, by the people. That is your state assembly. And then each county in each state has a county-level assembly. That is the government of the people, for the people, by the people at the local level. So there are over 3,000 counties across America, and they're all being rebuilt at local government. So the 34 states of the Union before the Civil War said, hey, we recognize there's a little issue here. What are we going to do about these other 16 states? They've been waiting around for 160 plus years because the Reconstruction Acts of the 1860s, post-Civil War, were never properly done. So those 30 plus states voted to admit the 16 states on an equal footing basis, retroactively to when they were recognized on paper to have been supposedly rolled into the Union. In the case of Washington, it's 1889. And that roll-in took retroactive effect October 1, 2020. And so all 50 states of the Union are in session now. Would you like to come home to this gin joint that you have a heritage to called America? You have to raise your hand and reclaim yourself. It's not going to be granted to you automatically. You actually have to undo the fraud that's been done to you. So in the Constitution room, I have posted a one-page common declaration that allows you to reclaim your American heritage from the state upon which you were born. Canada has its own processes. We found out that this fraud that was done to America was pretty much done to the rest of the world with minor adjustments and tweaks per their own circumstance. So we're not the only one that's waking up to this massive fraud. So let's get back to your one-page declaration. You read it, you comprehend that you're going to reclaim your birthright American citizenship. Then you go down and have it notarized at an everyday notary public. And then you need to reach out and get a hold of the assembly on your state. You're also going to find witness testimonies. On the witness testimony, you put a passport size picture on it. You find two people who've known you over 7 years, and you ask them, would you please do me a favor? Would you go and get this notarized? And all they're doing is, to the notary, is saying, say, this picture, I know this picture, and I know this picture by this name, and I've known them for 7 years plus. And with the notary action, they bring those documents to you. You bring a copy of your birth certificate to the state assembly, and in the state assembly, they have someone who's known as a recording secretary. Some states are blessed with a fair number, and some states are just really getting their feet wet. I happen to be such a recording secretary.
It's what?
It's a call they're having. Oh. Something about the Constitution.
Now, when you get this process done, you come back under the American side of the equation. Those 3 constitutions that exist have not been properly taught to the people for a reason. Because if you don't know which one inherently applies to you and you make the wrong grab,
Desperate.
you will be deemed to be a foreign citizen living on American soil, providing goods and services to the American people if you can find one. And those are the U.S. citizens. The other constitution for the contractor is the Constitution of the United States of America Incorporated, and those are municipal citizenry. Those too are providing goods and services to the American people. But they work in certain capacities. And their work contract is not properly disclosed to them. And that was by design. So the American Constitution is the Constitution for the United States of America unincorporated. The entirety of the American government is unincorporated and always has been. Back in the day of Lincoln, they set our unincorporated institutions aside and ever so conveniently said, the Americans are MIA, so we'll just stand in the gap until they show back up. Well, the employees got a little headstrong, went rogue on us, and they've been caught. In part, this is why DC is empty for the most part. This is why the 2016 election was an international military sting operation. This is why Gitmo was opened up, and Tierra del Fuego, and 3 or 4 other locations around the world. So there's supposed to be a 30-plus international nation military operation underway to liberate the world because this infiltration is everywhere. So in order to come back out from underneath all this corporate malarkey, we're rebuilding the American government with the American Constitution, American institutions, and the American common law. The American common law is the public law. Capital P public, capital L law. Being in law is not the same as at law. They built this prison of belief and vocabulary on the premise of fraud, semantic deceit, kidnap, personation, barratry. They have violated the principles of the Geneva Convention, the Hague Convention, the Anti-Slavery Act of 1926. Wouldn't you like to be able to put your toes in the sand once again and say, yes, by golly, I am an American? And then clean up this gin joint called America? Come back under the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Guarantees, which the other side recognizes as our Bill of Rights, and certain aspects of the Mayflower Compact for beginners. Now, in all three constitutions, there is built into it the 11th Amendment. The 11th Amendment was recognition for pass-through services because we are foreign to the contract. We are the employers, and they are the employees. This is why the education system was hijacked. So when Jimmy Carter took American history out of the school system in 1976, it left pretty much everybody under the age of 64 with an inaccurate comprehension in what they were looking at. The American Constitution is the superior instrument authorizing the contracts of the other two. If you don't know which constitution you stand under or how you stand under it, if you can't properly express your rights, none will be recognized and none will be given to you. One of our contractors is the Vatican, and they function under Roman law. There are three main maxims of Roman law: capitis de minutia maximus, capitis de minutia medius, and capitis de minutia minimus. And these are the constructions of names. If you pull out your driver's license, if you've got one, you'll find out the name on that instrument is in all caps. It's a business entity, and you're operating it as a franchisee. That's why your picture's there. And in reality, you're the authorized representative of a foreign franchise created under foreign law, administered under the municipal enterprise contractor. Any name expressed in all caps is evidence of a corporate entity. Capitis diminutia medius is upper lower style name. And here's where things get dicey. We found out in 1858, second session of Congress, Congress redefined some words that were used in everyday parlance. And one of them was person, and the other one was individual. They redefined the word person to a corporate entity. An individual is some kind of person created under some kind of law. And we're not taught to think this way. We've been so trusting of everything around us. So what kind of person is this? Is it a trust? Is it corporate? Is it an LLC? C Corp, S Corp, B Corp, a foundation? Or is it a person created under ecclesiastic law? This is the extent of how badly we've been treated by folks that we've trusted. And lastly, public school really did a poor job of utilizing the lowercase letters. I want you to write the letter I on a piece of paper. Don't forget to put that little dot there. That little dot is ever so important. Under capitis diminutia minimus in Roman law, that is the highest expression of freedom and right that can be bestowed on free people. Did you know that? Were you taught that? Donuts to dollars? Probably not. Now, should you decapitate that little precious dot, which is the head of a man or woman, you decapitate it and go to all capitals because the all capital thing is dead. And you kill off the man or woman and change its status. Capitis diminutia medius was also the use of a label for slaves in Rome. We were taught to capitalize person, place, and thing. Now, when we get involved with things, which side of the Adamic equation would you like to stand on? The namer of things or one of the named things of the field? And yes, that's important. So my inherent goal is to get people to recognize they've been standing in the wrong church, wrong pew, wrong street. No wonder they can't hear the choir. There is an American institution, American government, American state government called an assembly, an American county level assembly. Come home, folks. Come back to the land of the free and the home of the brave. You don't have to be afraid. Some people have said, well, I might lose my Social Security and I might lose my pension. I retired December 1 of 2014, And yes, I'm collecting both. The Social Security program was set up originally for the municipal citizenry and only the municipal citizenry. Not the everyday American and not the U.S. citizen. Only the municipal citizen. So back in the day when this was set up in the 30s, they put their hand out and they knowingly did not ask. They just accepted the money and said, you needed this. You had to have this. Why? To ensnare and entrap by way of fraud. Did you know behind your Social Security number there's a Social Security bond and it's resold and refinanced every 10 years? So that by the time you hit retirement age in the 60s, it's been sold and refinanced 6 times. And you get breadcrumbs. Your birth certificate was funded by way of the estimated lifetime earning potential of you based on mom and dad's occupations listed in the paperwork. That bond was funded and then sold on Wall Street, put into the mutual funds, and the world around us has bought in on everything. I used to be able to go into a website called GMEI Utility, sit a woman down, ask her how many children she had, bring up a certain screen, have her enter her SS number, and then I could show her the world trading upon her. The institution in what country, and whether the investment was active or had come to an end. And then I would say, what is the youngest of your children? By chance, do you know their SS number? And they would enter it. The screen would come up. The left-hand side of the columns was the transaction registry number. The next column was the institution. Scan over, the next column was the country the institution was located in. Scan it to the left, another column, and it would say whether it was active, matured, now, for you that have your driver's license, did you know that you have a bond on your license? Here in Washington, it's a $5,000 bond on each renewal cycle. And where you can go to look those up is treasurydirect.gov. And you're going to treat your driver's license number like you're going to be looking up a Series E or double E savings bond for value, for its maturity value. And when you get to the right screen, it'll say ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands. You're going to have to pull the value across from each of those and tally them up and find out how much of a bonding value your driver's license has. So if I told you you live in the middle of the apocalypse, the era of the buying and selling of souls, most of you would have laughed at anybody that said that 8 years ago. But I'm pretty certain at this point in time, enough people have heard about the straw man. Supposedly it's a bond in the birth certificate. Well, the entire banking system was set up where certain levels of knowledge were compartmentalized in the securities and exchange licenses. So if you didn't have a Series 6, Series 7, or a Series 9 securities license, you wouldn't have command of the vocabulary. Wouldn't you like to come back and reclaim your American birthright and heritage? What has been discovered is in the time of Lincoln, our ancestors were bonded. And every generation since then has been bonded. Labor bonds were taken out. Those of you on this call have a labor bond on you. So let's go back over to the birth certificate. The baby's born, has a birthday. There's a registration day. That's the day the instrument was created. And then they killed you on paper and probated your estate. And they made you a warrant officer in the Queen of England's Merchant Mariner Service. Now, a warrant officer in the private capacity on a cruise ship would be known as the purser. When a cruise ship goes into port, they buy goods, restock the ship, they pay the port fees and taxes. That's the job that you've been trained all of your life to do for free. Under a US-UK tax treaty, you have been voluntarily making estate tax returns under Category 5 gift and estate taxes to the Crown as an unpaid volunteer. Now, there's something else I want to make you aware of. The powers that be behind your back created different styles of commercial vessels behind you. And one of them is a Puerto Rican transmitting utility. And the Puerto Rican transmitting utility is in the IRS computers, engaged in Title 27 alcohol, tobacco, and firearms related activities. And everything in that file is BS bunk, garbage. But if you don't know the rules of the system and the all caps name and the upper and lower case names, so when you take a look at your mail, I want you to take a look at the two-letter style of your state. Is it two capital letters or is it a capital and a lowercase letter? Is the postal mark on the envelope in red or black? The red is the British mail, and the black is municipal mailing system. If you volunteer to be treated as a Brit, you're an indentured servant and a slave to the crown. If you choose to act as a municipal citizen in the all caps capacity, it's defined in law as a criminal and a slave automatically deemed guilty upon charging. And this is why the court system has about a 98% prosecution success rate. The attorneys are agents of the King of England in the King's civilian militia capacity, engaged in warfare to hand everything over to the crown. When our founding fathers set this country up, we were not subject to progenitor or primogenitor or entailments. We had no oath or allegiance to the crown of England whatsoever, and certainly no local duke or earl. However, with the mass re-registration and intentional misidentification of the American people, starting heavily in 1921 with the issuance of the birth certificates, they started kidnapping us out from under the American Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and denying our birthright to us. So if you ever had a traffic ticket problem, foreclosure, or some other issue with the county or the state, it's because you're standing in the wrong jurisdiction. We Americans should be holding our property possessions in land by land patent. Land patent to an American is the highest right and form of title, not subject to property taxes. Some of the earliest court cases go back to 1820 about this matter. When you reclaim yourself as the Ohioan, the Kansan, the Tennessean, the New Yorker, you can rightfully start the correction process. And then there are many things happening. April 5th, the Federation of States proclamated the new American Federated Gold-based dollar back into international recognition. The banking system in America is being restructured. The Federal Reserve went bankrupt in 2009 and was ordered to come back to the negotiation table, and they refused. And as a result, Saudi Arabia has also disconnected itself from the petrodollar, the contract that Richard Nixon set up in the 70s for the petrodollar is detached, allowing the world to go back to their local currencies based in assets. As of Monday night, Our American fiduciary in the banking realm informed us we have 400 million international trading partners now. Made in America is about to come back to mean something significant. Wouldn't you like to be part of it? You, as an American, are owed immense amount of assets. As a U.S. or municipal subject citizen, you are a peasant, pauper, serf, and slave. A foreigner living on the American soil. Wouldn't it be nice to have inherent rights from the American constitutional side of the contract, telling our employers they work for you, not vice versa? So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to open up for questions. Anybody have any questions? Go ahead and unmute if you have a question.
If you have questions, you can raise your hand and we can try to unmute you.
You're doing a great job, you two, and thank you, Jack, for being here. But great job, Silver 57, Jim. Great job. Lots of information. Jack, do you have anything you want to add? You've been studying this a long time.
Yeah, I got a lot of information from Jim, probably back in April or May or sometime like that. He spent a couple days with me just going over so much information, and there's a lot more to cover, and we'll probably have some more calls to relay some of this other information to everyone. And this will be this is recorded, so you can listen to it over and over again if you missed anything.
And that's when we're all going to have a lot of questions.
Right.
Certainly someone's got a question or two.
You would think so.
Although I do recognize I tend to fire hose people and overwhelm. But I try to give the 80,000-foot viewpoint in the lay of the land in the world. Because if someone doesn't recognize that there's an inherent problem and the inherent sourcing of the problem, then they are unable to form a proper question. How does this affect me in my everyday life? Well, think about it. You grow up, they give you this birth certificate, you run around, you finally get old enough to say, you know, one day I want to be like them, get my driver's license. What do you give to the DOL? your school papers based on your birth certificate. From the very foundations, being defrauded when you're just a couple of weeks old, we were never able to raise our hand knowingly, able to babble anything. The heinousness of what has been done with malice aforethought and intention. Anybody questions?
Jim, I have one that might help people if they hear this. What does this reclaiming ourselves do for us in terms of taxes? And I know we pay taxes to the county, the state, and the federal. So maybe you could go over that either tonight or we can do that another night. But I think that people would be interested in what you have to say.
Okay, so in that realm, recognize you've been working with a franchise, and it's not yours. It was created under foreign law, under foreign patent, and you've been deceived. So your blood, sweat, tears, creations, intellectual property, your patents, your labor has all been donated for free. And in 1929, they initiated a bankruptcy. In that bankruptcy, they bankrupted a corporate entity. So this entity that Lincoln brought in was bankrupted in 1907. All of the states' constitutions under it were bankrupted. So were the county charters. Okay? 1913, when they brought in the Federal Reserve to put America financially back under control of the Rothschild and the Bank of England and other key parties, they instituted primogeniture and entailments against us. This is why you pay property taxes. Because a British subject citizen has all of their property held in a royal trust under the king, and you're paying rent, fealty in your property taxes. You get what's called a leasehold. Now, we Americans have absolute right to a freehold, hence the land of the free, not subject to anybody. Now, when you reclaim yourself, for us guys, it's a simple matter. We've utilized one name all of our life, and I'm going to give you a scenario. Think of the various styles of names that I've shared with you as if they were sailboats. And one of those sailboats happens to be in Puerto Rico. But from the magazine, the picture, she's a splendid seagoing craft. So you hop on an airliner, go to Puerto Rico, you go down to the dock, you have an agent. He walks you on board, shows you the nifty widgets that are on board the sailboat, and you just fall in love, head over heels with it, and you buy the sailboat. Now you have to get her back here. So you leave Puerto Rico, go through the Panama Canal, come up the west coast in my circumstance. And by the time you get up here in the edge of Washington, it's October, November, and weather's turning, and you find out it's going to cost you an arm and a leg for mortgage fees. And the Coast Guard tells you you have to reflag your boat. More fees. Well, you're not inclined to sail in November, December, January, February, March. And so I'm just going to dry dock the boat. I'm going to pull it out of, put it in dry dock. Well, this is what you're going to do, in effect, with your name, because of the foreign nature of it. And you're going to learn how to exercise your reversionary trust interest from being the donor to canceling the donation for free. And once you cancel the donation, you're going to be able to put that donation back in your pocket. We have 2 letters that go back out, one to the Internal Revenue Service and one to the IRS, that go to that effect of, I hereby revoke the donation, and it is good for up to 10 years retroactive attachment. Now, things get a bit more dicey for you ladies. You may have been adopted once or twice. You might have a marriage or two. And all of these different names that you've utilized, you get to treat them like shoes. Nike, Skechers, Adidas, and Gucci. And you put them back in your closet, and no one gets to walk in your shoes without first asking and paying you. And paying you very handsomely, I might add. So there is a document for the deed of reconveyance of these names from one jurisdiction in international commerce, dry docking them to the land, and placing them in international trade at your leisure, and no one behind your back gets to utilize them. That's the first level of improvement in your wonderful life, by not having to file your April 15th Peters Pence return. That's the original creation of the April 15th tax collection. Taxes for the Crusades. Now, the states have been a little bit recalcitrant to recognize some stuff. And they've been put into a catch-22 of, you either recognize or you're all out internationally recognized as criminals. Now, when FDR and his cronies initiated the bankruptcies in 29, FDR put into place a remedy and relief for the American people to have their bills paid for by Congress. And they did such a splendid job of letting everyone know about it that our grandparents and parents never utilized it. Well, these remedies are codified in legislation of House Joint Resolution 192, Public Law 7310, and it's codified in Title 50 as remedy and relief. So these books have been on the laws have been on the books for over 90 years. And it's called the Mutual Offset Credit Exemption Exchange. You've labored, you've produced, and you are owed certain accounting practices, I'll put it that way, whereby Congress takes care of you in that usufruct that they created with the birth certificate. They're on the hook for usufructuary obligations. And they've done such a piss poor job of taking care of us that the Federation has informed them that if they do not step up to the plate, their contracts are gone. Because America has grown up to a point we can mow our own lawn, we can provide ourselves our own services, and they've been informed that they've gone off the rails so far. Why would we trust you with anything going forward? Some of you may have seen certain disclosures that if Trump was reelected, 90% of government would go away. And the reason for that is under FDR, over 350 agencies, more hired help of the hired help of the hired help were created. And folks, you've been double dipped and double taxed since 1933 through these agencies. One to the British territorial contractor and one from the municipal contractor. Well, the municipal contractor was informed and put into Chapter 7, international bankruptcy. And it no longer exists in its old form, known as the United States of America, Inc. It's gone, folks. Now, the United States, Inc., it's being restructured. Why is it being restructured?
Yeah, why?
Because our American complaints were taken to the absolute overseer of all of this, known as the Pope. Under Roman law, the Roman Curie oversees every corporation on the planet. And I don't care what tongue you speak, it's subject to the Roman Curie. So in 2013, the Pope issued something called a motu proprio, informing the world's corporations and all structures to get their operations back inside the cat box because it stunk. Here in Washington, we gave Microsoft notice. They're a corporation created under foreign law, subject to the Washington Assembly. And we have the authority to unplug them and liquidate them. If you are a C Corp, S Corp, B Corp, D Corp, foundation, or an LLC, your business enterprise was given to the Vatican. All your blood, sweat, tears, dreams, and sweat equity were given away. So where we're at today on December 23rd of 22, International Fraud and Treason Notice was issued and proclamated against all, and I mean all, of the attorneys on American soil. During the 40s, 50s, 60s, and early 70s, we were propagandized. Go to school, get a good education, make something of yourself, become a lawyer, a doctor, or a dentist. Well, these are professions that are and have been utilized against the American people. During the days of Abraham Lincoln, the physicians running the sick houses that became the predecessors to the hospital, some of them were outstanding in their healing and nursing abilities, that the Union Army Medical Corps approached them and offered them a commission in the medical corps if they could pass a simple test. If they passed the test, they became captains in the medical corps, Union Army soldiers, under Title 37 as an ununiformed soldier. So when you look at the TV program MASH, and Hawkeye and Pierce are kibitzing with each other and ask the question, how did I end up in Korea? Because the moment they got their medical license, they became military officers in the Army Medical Corps. Dentists are too. As a matter of fact, a license is permission to do something that would be otherwise illegal. So stand back and ask yourself, this thing I'm doing, why would it be illegal? Because your license allows you to treat a certain sector of the population that is covered with the license. And for the doctor's office, that would be a municipal citizen. Not the general population at large. So when you pay taxes, sales tax, what are you actually paying for? You just bought a tire. You paid an excise tax. What is the nature of an excise tax? Where'd the tire come from? Oh, it's made in Germany. So you also paid an impost tax or import tax. And a duty. We need to get back to recognizing the who, the what, the where, and the how. So you have a municipal government enterprise that you've paid taxes to. You have a British territorial government enterprise that you've been paying taxes to. You've been paying these estate taxes with the 1040 form under a U.S.-UK tax treaty. And back in the days of Lincoln and Ulysses Grant, there was a bond scam pulled utilizing 10-year and 40-year maturity increments. That's another aspect of history you're going to stumble into. But if you can get away from your payroll withholding, let's say 25 to 30% of your withholding in your paycheck can go from the left pocket back over to the right pocket for you to utilize on a week-to-week or bi-weekly time frame, and it'll raise your standard of living a little bit in spite of the inflation that we've all experienced in the last few years. Real inflation rate is over 20%, by the way. Now, if we can get back to holding by right your house, get away from the property taxes, you don't have to live in fear of being ejected.
Mm-hmm.
It's come to our awareness that certain families provided heritage trusts for future use in the development of mankind. And some of these go back to the days of the Spanish conquistadors. It was discovered that everything in these trusts should have been implemented in 1941. And everything from that time forward, coming into the future, everything for government at every level was already paid for and provided on paper, but not utilized properly. So for the last 83 years, there's been a gross tax misadministration. Imagine a number so large it's got 26 commas in it. Not 26 zeros, 26 commas. And there are dozens of these accounts. There's no shortage of money, folks. We've been spoon-fed this mindset of lack and scarcity. Our thinking processes have been compromised. We are sparks of the infinite creator, and we are abundant. We're producers. We're creators of ideas, implementers, and makers. Dream a little bit about what it would be like to live in a land or a world where the mindset is everything is in absolute abundance. Because it's coming. The man who is the key representative for these heritage trusts was kidnapped from where he was living and placed in America, labeled a U.S. citizen. He adopted South Carolina as his domicile state, the place where he lays his head. He's now a full-fledged, recognized American. He's one of us. And America is in the driver's seat in the economic realm. you're going to hear about an American trade bank coming back into the land. You're going to hear about some company called Global Family Group. We utilize them with a land and soil banking charter. It's a great time to come home. When you come home, you're going to be able to file an adjustment to your W-4 form and eliminate your federal withholding. And you have a lot of learning to do. But each state is up and running. And we're about to take the reins of control. Because many of the states are about to hold the first absolute American election in over 160 years. And if you're not a status corrected American, you're not going to be able to vote. Because it's unlawful and illegal for a foreign citizen to vote in American elections. Just as it is unlawful and illegal for an American to vote in the corporate elections. Because when you vote in the corporate elections, your vote is nothing more than a straw poll, an opinion poll. And those whom you give your voice to are not under any obligation to perform to your wishes. That's why the Congress you think of right now is nothing more than a corporate Congress. It's not American, folks, because the American Congress actually meets in Philadelphia Hall and hasn't been there in over a century.
So Jim, this is Arjax again. Well, what kind of election and when will it be for the Republic? And who are the nominees?
Well, one has to comprehend how the Republic was created. It was a stepping stone institution. So the states of the Union nominated a deputy to go into the Confederation of States. And from the Confederation of States as a business entity, our federal republic was populated. You have to be an American to rebuild those two institutions. And the Federation of States ran America in 1776 to 1781 in international jurisdiction, and it can do so and has been doing so for the better part of 20 years. Now, getting our contractors to recognize that their operation was compartmentalized and even they didn't know everything. So if you don't know that you don't know, you walk down this path thinking what you're doing is normal. This is where many of our employees at the county, city, and state level are in this condition. They're public education is just like anybody else's, even though they may have a degree. A circle is made up of 360 degrees, so how much of that circle is an associate's? How much of that circle is a master's? I want to bring something to your attention. PhD. Think of the word elephant. Now pronounce PhD.
And what does that mean?
Well, PH is F, followed by D. So even those who have their PhD, doctorate juris, whatever it is, don't know the fullest extent of what they're doing until they're brought into certain information with actual sources. So the various assemblies are talking to the state legislatures as corporate enterprises, letting them know that they're employees of the American people. Now, under the Judiciary Act of 1789, if you read it, you'll read the courts of contemporaneous superior jurisdiction. Those are the common law courts of the people, being able to tell the hired help what to do, nullifying bad regulation, bad law, or bad statutes, codes, and regulations. In the corporate realm, there are over 80 million codes, statutes, and regulations that the U.S. citizen and the citizen known as the municipal citizen have to abide by. And our American law system is very, very streamlined. It's a little bit draconian because it's pretty much black and white. You either did or did not do an act, and you did or did not harm someone. In the de facto corporate realm, everything is an economic crime, and they levy fines, fees, and sin taxes on you. We still have claim jumping, cattle rustling, and horse thieving on the books. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, they are hanging offenses. We don't have victimless crime on our side of the fence. It calls for a new code of behavior and knowingness. The Northwest Ordinance called for the teaching of, or the mandate to have education, morality, and religion as the primary drivers of creating the new states. In most states, education is the bulk of the state budget. And I don't think that money has been very well spent in the last 80 years. Here in Washington, we've identified 5 layers of mid-level administration that we're going after. And you're going to find out many of your state governments are nothing more than a leased operation. It has absolutely no assets. I myself have looked at the state of Washington Attorney General's office and looked at their budget and found out that right down to the paperclip is nothing but leased. Desks, filing cabinets, printers, copiers, everything is leased, including the building. So who has got those juicy contracts? And who's related to who? Whose pocket are we lining?
Hello, anybody there?
Hello, Ted.
Yeah.
Is call over?
No.
Oh. Well, I just got here, got settled in and got my Wi-Fi hooked up, and I can go to a nice quiet corner where I can hear and just listen, and I'll add in if I need to, but I'll just sit and listen. I haven't eaten yet, so if you don't mind, I'll turn my mic off and I'll do that.
I've just been doing the 80,000 view foot of the inherent problem that is in the land.
Okay. Well, that's good. All right. Well, I'll just listen in, okay? And then
Sounds good.
And I'll come back. I'll come back on if you want me to.
Well, enjoy your meal.
All right.
Hello, Todd. It's good to hear from you.
Hi.
I was gonna ask Jim to go back and touch on what he shared with us the other day about Lincoln's fingernails. What's underneath this? Underneath the Lincoln memorial.
Yeah. That was good. It was all good. Pre Lincoln and then post Lincoln, and then another several minutes he spent on post the Fed. I guess you call it Jekyll Island, the Fed creation. That was a whole nother deal. But anyway, I'll just listen. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be there. Man, there's quite a few people on the call, so that's good.
Okay, back in the day of Lincoln, our American government was probably compromised in 1856. That was when the last actual American president was elected. And from 1856 to 1860, we are now examining who the traitors were that were infiltrated into government, different levels, who had British Crown sympathizing tendencies. Because without the embedment, the bricklaying operation, if you will, for the fraud that Lincoln perpetrated against the country. So when Lincoln brought in the Scottish corporation, the United States of America, Inc., out of Edinburgh, Scotland, he imported Roman code into America. This is civil law. Again, we get back to that capitis de minutia maximus stuff. If you look at the Lincoln Memorial, I stammer calling it a monument because what you're looking at is in reality a worship temple. That's right, a worship temple. So if you look at Lincoln sitting in the great chair, his hands rest at the face of the arms. Underneath his fingers are colonnades carved into the face of the chair. Because Lincoln is the pillar upon which the fraud was built. As an attorney, he couldn't be an American president. Importing Roman civil code and being an agent of the Vatican at the same time, what you're looking at is a worship temple to the first installed American Roman Caesar. Hail Caesar! And that tripe about Honest Abe, he wasn't that honest. His family was actually a Tory family who lost everything in the colonial war. And he kind of had a vengeful vendetta that he was trying to pull off. That's why he became an attorney before 3 Admiralty judges. Now here's a shocker. Some guy by the last name of Grant. He was a general in the Union Army. His real name was Hiram. And he went by the acronym of U.S. Grant. U.S. Grant, because they were granting themselves everything. In the swap out, setting this multiple century fraud operation into motion. So while we have the monument out there in D.C., there's a statue commemorating what Lincoln did for the crown in the inner city of London. As thanks for what he did for them. England is divided up into 4 regions, and each region has a court. There are 4 great inns of court for England. If you ran through their court system, you might find yourself standing in the great inns of court, pleading your case. And if you still didn't like the decision, you could go to Queen's Court. And from Queen's Court, you could go before the king. And what the king said about it was end of the line. King's Court. When they brought over the Scottish Corporation and lodged it in Delaware, they also set up King's Bench Court in Delaware, and it's the only state of the Union that has a King's Court in it. Your local district court is a military court. And you'll notice that it's under military function by the gold fringe around it. 1937, FDR called all the state governors and judges into D.C., and they had a powwow. And he told all the judges from this time forward, you're going to be running admiralty courts. They set aside our American common law courts. These are military admiralty tribunals, and they have their own particular way of functioning. I posted a section up in the Constitution room about flags, size, configuration, when and where they are flown, and what they mean. Go search it out, learn it. You'll be amazed at the symbology being in your face all this time. In 1866, during the Civil War, a certain man who had a relationship with a group down south in the South was found to be in Indiana. And they arrested him and they put him before a military tribunal, and they were going to sentence him to death, and he appealed it. And the court case is known as Milligan ex parte. It's 71 U.S. 2. And it basically says that when there is a lawful civilian court present in the land, the military cannot haul civilians before the military and try them. Some of the states have already issued that notice to all branches of the military. I happen to be the co-author of that instrument here on Washington. And even one Donald John Trump at Mar-a-Lago got served notice. And in the Washington ex parte Milligan notice, we dangled a carrot in front of Donald. You see, that military contract that came up out of the Treaty of Peace of 1783 placed the military under English control. Well, I offered him recognition as the Commander-in-Chief of the Amalgamated American Armed Forces. So as CIC of the Amalgamated American Armed Forces, he would have to bring all the military back to the land to bring them out of that commercial mercenary status. And when doing that, he would once again make the military honorable soldiery. Now, I'm only the co-author of that document. I and the Washington coordinators spent 4 days hashing that instrument over. So the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Marines, Space Force, the Pentagon got noticed. And the last I knew, about 8 states are real close to issuing that notice. And if you get a hold of Washington's ex parte notice, turn to page 3. you'll see my John Henry on it. And you'll see a particular office I was put into that gave me the authority to be the co-author of that document. So I wear many hats in helping rebuild the American operation here in Washington. But I also share myself across the country, just like I'm doing with you folks tonight. So wouldn't you like to come back under the American side of the constitutional contract? Because which constitution you cling to, you'll either be recognized as an American, recognized as a U.S. subject citizen here under the Residency Act as a foreigner, or a municipal citizen here under the Residency Act of 1790. And if we put an end to the Resident Act of 1790, at this point in time, roughly 23 million people who are the contract workers and their inline heirs are eligible for deportation. Now, every university, and I don't give a rat's ass if it's Princeton, Yale, Duke, Pepperdine, or the University of Washington, if they have a law school and they're teaching attorneys, that institution's charter is subject to liquidation. The alumni are not going to be very happy to find out they've been participating in the subjugation of the American people and themselves. Imagine being a third or fourth year student in a law school and finding out that your law degree, or what you think you want, is about to become useless. And dear mommy and daddy have put out $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for their degree, and find out that they're all eligible for deportation. Here in Washington, our business assembly has approached the State Bar Association, and they have lowered the standard and broke up the entry to the bar so low that a blind man can limbo underneath it. So now, the issue is going to be is the character who's waving this club card competent. We've had 3 Western Washington county prosecutors step down, and when the youngest prosecutor, as a one-term candidate, was asked why he's not re-running for election, he just kind of grabbed his lapel and said, well, The legal landscape in Washington has changed, and it's time for me to move on. Yes, folks, change is coming to America. Some people will be very happy with it. Others, not so much. Any other questions?
Anyone can ask a question, and we will just raise your hand, unmute, and we'll raise your hand, and we'll let you, ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay.
I have a question. When are you going to be back?
Oh, you want me back, do you?
I think by the time the word spreads of what's gone on tonight, that we'll have some excited people.
Well, how about next Friday, same bat channel?
That sounds perfect. And everybody can grab a friend and come back.
Yep.
For all of you that have endured tonight's
They've been here 5 times. I say, so
Will this call be recorded so it can be shared?
Yep.
Yes, it's going to be on YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sweet low tide. Do you have any questions or anything you want to add?
Well, I missed too much of the call to know what was talked about, and I don't really want to go back over something that has already been raised up. But I'll be in touch. It's just I've got so many people around me right now. It's really hard to hear, and I just listen to the recording later on if that's okay.
It's a done deal. It'll be up on the website as soon as I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, again, I thank everybody who has shown up and had the courage to sit through this. Share it with your friends, your associates, your family.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
I have one last question. Is there a reason why you didn't want to tell anybody what position you hold in the Republic in Washington State?
I'm not in the Republic.
Well, what are you in?
I am in the State Assembly.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the body known as the American Republic has to be rebuilt. And that's probably 5 years out. We've discovered an attempt by a number of groups to masquerade the authority and the claim of authority. And they've been rebutted and found lacking for lack of status and standing. Many people are aware of the Brunson case, and the U.S. Supreme Court has said time and time again, status and standing. Most people have no clue what that means. You have to have capacity as an enforcer of the constitutional contracts. And if you're not in a position with the proper status and standing to enforce the contracts, you get rebuffed and rejected. And this is something that has been improperly taught. And we've been all indoctrinated. We've been Perry Masoned to death. Judge Janine, divorce court, and everyone has an improper comprehension of how law functions, how it's derived. Here in Washington, we're about to actually hold our American election. And once we hold it, I'll be a little more open about certain other things. But
Okay.
many people are going to find out that there's going to be the need for a new election so many days down the road. But if you're not a documented, status-corrected American, you're not going to be able to participate in it.
How many people meet that status that are eligible?
It depends on state to state. Some state assemblies are more robust than others.
Now, what positions will be in the election that we will be voting for?
Well, for those that are able to, they are state level elections. When you reclaim yourself in your state, you also repopulate the county on which you stand. But first and foremost, the state gets populated. And in the process, the counties get backfilled. So pretty much all the offices that you're thinking of, like the Treasury, the road crew, the coroner's office, these need to be filled. Now, because of the Lincoln rewrite of the contract, the state corporate enterprise, being an employee contractor of the American people, receive its marching orders from the state assembly.
So will districts and things like that be reset?
Well, these are words in the vocabulary that need to be comprehended. When you invoke the word district, you're inside a military district. So the school district, the water district, the weed district, anytime you invoke district, it's a military function. And why is that? It's because Lincoln put the military in control and soft martial law at that point in time. Yes, America has been under occupation for over a century. Now, I would encourage everybody to go to their county seat and ask for their county corporate charter. and ask for the municipal charter as well. If we can get enough people just to do that, our employees will go bug-eyed in knowing something's going on.
These elections you spoke of, are they going to be triggered by what we know as Nasara?
No. This is independent.
So each state will be holding their own elections at a given time?
Yep.
And what will trigger that to happen?
Okay, there are 4 key pillars that function in the state assembly. And those 4 key pillars have to be rebuilt, and they have to function like a well-oiled machine. When that happens and we have the maturity to operate our actual state government, hence the government of the people, for the people, by the people, then the Federation will give the blessing that we are competent and fully standing. Like I said earlier, we have had 2 contractors taxing us side by side. In 1937, there was something established, and you can look it up, called the Declaration of Interdependence. This is where one contractor played ping pong with the other citizenry back and forth. And if any of you have gotten a recent traffic ticket, I want you to look at it and how it's structured. It'll be last name, comma, first name, middle name, in all caps. It has the same military structure as a Navy seaman who has that little strip over the left breast that says Smith. It's in all caps. And right now, the Federation of States is working on some issues that affect us all. And so they're primarily working at a systemic relief level right now.
Well, if we do change our status, then we'll not be able to vote in this upcoming election. Is that correct? No, I'm thinking we lost Jim.
He's there, but he's muted.
I don't know what happened.
I don't even see him. Do you see
He's
him?
got his
Salty?
hands up. Got his hand up.
Oh, well, where is he?
He was muted.
Let's see if we can find him.
His hand is up.
Okay. Let me see if I find him. Do you see him, Salty?
Yeah, I found him, and I think I've got his hand. I think he can
Yep.
talk now.
Yep,
Oh,
I'm
there
back.
he is. There he is. There he is.
So with the car issue of registration, let's hang that up till next time, and know that that is an issue countrywide that's being worked on. I thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Oh, Jim, one last question that I was trying to ask. If we change our status now, we will not be able to vote in the upcoming municipal election. Is that correct?
It's not the municipal, it's the British Territorial Corporation.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Okay, so there's been a series of substitutions and bankruptcies that have happened. A bankruptcy happened in 1907, 1929, and several of them in between. So when Donald took the United States Corporation into Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Northern District of Florida, Tallahassee, he dissolved the company. Okay? The municipal side of things tried firing up a company called the Office of the White House, Inc. as a municipal assumption of contract. And then there was a company discovered called the United States of America, Inc., chartered in India.
Oh, my gosh.
And it has been rebuffed. There are a number of groups across the country that have attempted to assert that they are the government, the American government, this government, that government. And there's a fraud attempt at motion to bring a new conundrum to the vocabulary known as the American citizen. We, the people, are not citizens like in the European sense, because in Europe, when you are born as a citizen, you owe an absolute obligation to your respective government. In America, the government exists to protect the people and to protect property. That's it. So inherently, you are a American state national of the state of the Union in which you were born in. And should you choose to step up to support your respective state government, you can step up into the role of an American state citizen, at which time you have a fealty to your state to run it like it is your own household business, to the standard known as the prudent man standard. You wouldn't do things for yourself to jeopardize yourself, therefore you won't jeopardize others. It's a higher form of expectation and performance. The American government starts at the kitchen table, moves into your community, moves into your county, moves up into your state. The American state citizen functions at the international interface because anything that's outside your respective state borders becomes international. Anything that functions inside your borders are international because each state is recognized as a nation unto itself, and inherently it has its own natural people. And that's what you need to reclaim. Are you one of the people?
Well, you have certainly given us a lot of information tonight and a lot to ponder and consider and to re-listen and to try to understand.
So
That's for sure.
I asked pardon me.
No,
I
go
asked
ahead.
everyone to get a salt and pepper shaker. And the reason for this, take that napkin that you had of and for written on and put it between the salt and pepper shaker with the for toward the salt shaker. Since the day of the computer came on and they changed it from word command to graphic user interface, we become a very visual oriented society, and people need to see representations. So the people of America are the salt of the earth. The king is the pepper. The salt of the earth created the Constitution for the United States of America, unincorporated. We are the delegators of contract to the hireling. And when you incorporate the word for versus of is apart from, as if it's a contract, an extended relationship. So the Constitution of the United States is a contract. And in the 1800s, early 1800s, the contract meant federal, or federal meant contract, vice versa. And that was everyday understanding. Now you take the second napkin, put the for toward the salt, and the other, the side, the of side, to the coffee cup, to the butter dish, whatever you use, as the Vatican contract. And the reason the Vatican got their contract is the very first thing the Continental Congress did was establish a postal treaty. The world's mail runs by Vatican Postal Treaty under the UPU, the Universal Postal Union. I'll elaborate further next time we meet.
Well, I want to thank you for being here and sharing so much. And it was overwhelming. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we will put it out of when you're going to be back with us. So thank you so much, Silver Jim, for being here with us.
Next Friday.
Use YouTube and re-listen to the call and go over there and replay it and share it with others and invite them over here next week. We'll do it again. So thank you, Jim. Thank you, RJack, and the community for being here. Be blessed and enjoy your evening. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Salty.
Same bat time, same bat channel next Friday night.
Thank you.
Excellent.
We'll be excited. Thank you again.
Be safe, be blessed, enjoy your week.